What is up, fans of the My Hero collectible card game? What I've got for you today is going to be a list of my top 5 favorite decks to play. Now, this isn't necessarily decks that are competitive, decks I would expect to see at the HLC, anything of that nature. Simply decks that I've just had a blast playing. And I will be sure to put the link to the UVS deck lists in the description, so if you want to check them out, feel free to do so. We see a lot of content that gets put out here around tier lists and around which characters people think are best. Recently, Tim Keefe even put out a pretty cool video about prospects, so kind of similar to this, but more character focused as far as looking at what characters outside of that top meta are kind of interesting or on the up and coming. This is more deck focused, so this is going to give you an insight onto some decks that I've really enjoyed, and I again highly encourage that you check these out, maybe try them out for yourself. So without further ado, number 5 on the list for me is going to be Air 13. So it's kind of a meme deck. It's an Extendo Hair deck. I really enjoy Extendo Hair as a card. It allows you to one-shot somebody at certain points. There comes a point where if you can drag the game out long enough that an Extendo Hair is just going to kill somebody and there is nothing they're going to be able to do about it. The deck has good poke attacks like Zero Grav Lift and Electric Jolt and Rebound Sidekick to generate those momentum, which really you only need about 2 or 3 to guarantee it being the Extendo Hair being fast enough to kill somebody. Obviously, any more than that's icing on the cake. It's more about getting foundations into play and having enough damage on the attack to get there. So that's where some of those poke attacks help while you're generating the momentum. And then you just have to try to survive long enough, which as a 7-hander seems a little scary, but 13 does have 22 health and does have that couple nice abilities that do help her to stay alive a little bit longer, as well as on air has access to some really solid defensive foundations. For example, Wall Cling to help keep yourself alive while you're working up to that kill turn. So number 5 on my list would be Air 13. Number 4 on my list is Chaos Death Arms. So Death Arms in general to me is just a blast to play. He's a very controlling character with his start a turn ability, being able to selectively commit down 2 of your opponent's foundations. It's incredibly powerful, super strong, probably doesn't get enough love for how good it really is. And then also having the ability to pump stats on offense. Yes, I know you're committed to playing 5 difficulty attacks. However, there's some really good ones on Chaos. If you take a look at that lineup, there's some really strong 5 difficulty attacks. And it actually does gel, I think, very well together. That attack lineup, that attack package fits together so nicely. It plays like butter. And then you have access to Cool Student, which helps you cheat progressive and make those strings a little easier, those attack strings. So even though you're playing 5s back to back, the Cool Student does kind of help alleviate some of the stress of continuing to play progressively more difficult 5s. So ton of fun. Really love the deck. I love Death Arms as a character as a whole, but in particular, I think the Chaos build has been my favorite, just as far as viability and control goes. So definitely check that one out. It's a blast. Next on my list has been a deck that I've kind of recently discovered, haven't put as much time into yet as I want and as I plan to. And that's kind of why it's maybe sitting at 3 on my list at the moment. But that's Fire Pixie Bob. So I have probably 5 different Pixie Bob lists built at the moment, and the one that I'm sharing today has been the one that I've seen the most success with, and I think is probably the most stable. But with Fire Pixie Bob, having access to Blue Flame Palm Strike to generate the momentum off the enhance. Pixie Bob's enhance allows you to generate a momentum on her face, and they're probably not going to block the Blue Flame Palm Strike. It's really not a great attack to block. It's only 3 damage. It's 5 speed. Just doesn't feel very good to block, so you're probably getting a momentum there. And then on Fire, of course, you have access to capture evildoers. So there's a possibility that with 1 attack, you're generating 4 momentum, which is crazy. With that momentum, a couple cool things you can do would be Howitzer Impact. So Levi just recently featured a deck profile of Death Shiggy 2 utilizing a similar strategy where you generate a lot of quick momentum, and then Howitzer can draw a ton of cards and allow you to just continue to either attack or to build up a bigger wall in a hurry with blocks still in hand. Ton of flexibility. And then on top of that, you have Recipro Burst, which is always looming in Fire Pixie Bob then. And there comes a point where if your opponent doesn't have a reset, where it's just going to kill them. It doesn't matter what they have. It doesn't matter how many foundations. It doesn't matter what block they have in hand. It doesn't really matter how much life they have left. You've got so much momentum that you're just going to one-shot your opponent. And especially on 7-hand characters, they don't have resets. It's pretty easy to do. You have other cards too, other good poke cards like Ignited Arrow. Again, doesn't feel good to block. So things that will do a little bit of damage and give you that momentum that you need to finish games late. So absolute blast to play. I just haven't had enough time to hammer it out and play a bunch of games with it. So currently it's sitting at number 3 on my list. Number 2 on my list is a deck that I don't think I've seen anyone else play. I haven't heard anyone else talking about it. I haven't seen it floating around. But it's just been such a pleasure to play. It's so goofy, but it's Piercing Thorn Lance's Nomu. So it is a combo deck, full and full. Like it's all it is. It's straight combo, and you really have to be patient with that deck, which is odd for Nomu. No, usually Nomu is just keep throwing attacks and seeing if your opponent can block them and try to kill them. Whereas this is trying to set up the combo to loop Piercing Thorn Lances. So what Piercing Thorn Lances does, if you're unfamiliar, is that it has an enhance where you can add another attack, another low attack from your card pool to your momentum. So if you play your first one, play your second one, tuck the first one. On Earth, then you've got access to cards like Prehensile Tail, for example, that can then pick that momentum back up into your hand, allow you to attack with it again, and tuck then with the second one you played, first one in your chain, back into your card pool. And again, as many Prehensile Tails as you have in play is as many times as you can loop it there. You also have access to Celebrity Status to put it on top of your deck. Combo that with Chivalrous Competitor to draw it. So you would stack it on top, pick it back up. It's another means of looping Piercing Thorn Lances. You also, in this list, I have 3 copies of Hardened Jab. So if you happen to build down a Piercing Thorn Lances with a Male Bonding or It Can't Be Fixed or something of that nature, you have the ability to pick it up out of your stage and get a chain going that way. And then it's the only other non-Ojiro deck that I've ever encountered that actually likes Student of the Art. Again, if I've checked one and I have one in hand, you can get the combo going on just that if you have a Student of the Art in play. So you would play your Piercing Thorn, Student of the Art to bring another Piercing Thorn out of your discard piles, or discard pile, tuck that into your momentum, and then you can start your chain with your Prehensile Tails, with your Chivalrous, with your Celebrity Status, all that good stuff. So straight combo deck. It's just, here's 5 or 6 low attacks in a turn for 10 damage a piece. Can you block enough? Most of the time, the answer is no. It's very hard to handle that. So, ton of fun. It has really surprised people, I think, because until the combo starts to go, you don't realize really what's building and what's coming. And then by the time that you've figured it out, it's kind of too late. So, absolute blast. Has major weaknesses, just like any traditional Nomu does. Being a 5-hander, very susceptible to decks that can just string together 6, 7, 8 attacks in a single attack string, where his 6 damage doesn't matter. But regardless, deck is a absolute blast, and that's why I've got it at number 2 on my list. Number 1 on my list of my absolute favorite decks to play at the moment. This is a character that I have been high on since the game first came out. I've tried him out in many different facets with many different builds on many different symbols. Always had a good time with it, but this build in particular just cracks me up. And that would be Oops All Mids Sero on order. So the deck only plays mid attacks, and The objective or the goal or the plan being that it's a funny punch deck too. So funny punch being a really potent mid really pairs well with the rest of the deck and what it has going on. Set 3 gave us access to some pretty cool cards. Again, funny punch being a huge one, but then the cat punch as well. It is pretty wild, especially with Sero. If they only half block the cat punch, you're drawing 3 cards, which it gets really funny when you throw a couple cat punches and your opponent feels the need to half block them to try to stay alive. And now you've drawn 6 cards off of 2 cat punch. It also can take really good advantage of future charge, which historically has been a challenging card to fit into decks because it's a low speed, low damage attack. But Sero being able to swap that over to a high or a low, depending on the situation, and then again, chain together the card draw, you can find yourself with some hilariously high number of cards in your hand in a hurry if your opponent is half blocking your attacks, or even if they're not, even still, just so much natural card draw there, reciprocal extend draws. You have access to Jolt on mid, which is really, really strong. And then the last attack that I haven't yet mentioned would be Slashing Whirlwind. So it's pretty easy, like I said, to generate a couple of momentum early game. Your attacks are relatively cheap to play. You can throw them off zone. They don't feel great to block, especially half block. So you generate the momentum, and then you can use your Sero once per game, pick out the last of a block zone that your opponent has, and then just completely go into them with a funny attack string, and just decimate them in a hurry with Slashing Whirlwinds and funny punches. So deck is so much fun. I've handed it off to some other people to try, and it's funny to watch the smile on their face as they realize just the goofiness of the deck and what it can do. Again, I don't think it's a top tier deck by any stretch of the imagination, but it is probably the most fun deck, or one of the most fun decks I've ever played in this game to date. I don't know. It's so funny just seeing, yourself have 12, 13, 14 cards in hand and still plenty of foundations to attack with. It just feels really good. It's absolute blast to play. So that rounds out my top 5 for you. I do have an honorable mention as well here, and it's a deck that I played last night. I've only used it one time, so I didn't want to put it on my list because I haven't used it enough yet to really get a feel for how I feel about it, and if it cracks the top 5. But right now it's looking pretty potent to push that Air 13 deck out, to be honest with you. And I've got a little bit of a sentimental attachment to this, but it's Earth Aoyama 1. So my first competitive experience in this game was actually playing Aoyama 1. It was actually on Life, though. Played it in Omaha, and ended up taking 32nd place in that provisional with that Aoyama deck. Really on kind of a rough day. Ended up losing my dog that same day. So to be able to fight through that tragedy and still perform well with that deck felt really good. So kind of an homage to that. But yeah, Earth Aoyama 1, it's kind of goofy because now with Hulking Grimace, you have the ability to play it for free with Aoyama's face. And it just feels really, really good, especially because you've got a lot of ways for your opponent to be forced to commit their board down, with like Back Alley Haymaker and Final Exam failures, with Stare Down being able to freeze your opponent's foundations. So it makes it really, really hard to block anything 5 speed or greater when your opponent doesn't have any foundations to be able to even block with. Then you've got the ever-present Naval Laser Beam, which can do some massive damage at massive speed. You have access to Apathetic to prevent the resets like you're so obvious. It was a really fun deck to play, and it really kind of caught me off guard with how well it actually works. I thought it was going to be more of a meme than anything, but it actually didn't really feel like that after using it. It felt pretty legit. Again, none of these decks, I don't see any of these decks being highly competitive or anything like that. But from a locals perspective, maybe like that deck it definitely surprised, and I would take it out of the meme character category and put it into a more serious category at this point. But yeah, so that's my top 5 there with a little bonus one for you. I hope you enjoy. Let me know in the comments if you agree, disagree with some of these lists, or if you've got some other kind of fun fringe decks that you would encourage me to check out or anyone else. And like I said, description for these decks will be in the comments. Check them out. Let me know. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy it, and appreciate your time with me today. We'll talk to y'all later. Peace.